Well, welcome. Tonight, we're going to have an inside look at an area of Milford that we hope we don't ever hear from. Chief Robbie and his staff of the Milford Police Department are unique, and we'll go through some of the areas. Because when we look at the media around the country, all you hear is not flattering, not pleasant ideas, incidents. Yet in Milford, and I'm pretty proud of the fact that we've had two demonstrations about our police force, both of them in favor, saying thank you for all you do. Because these are the people, you call them first responders. What I call them is my rights protector. Because when bad things are happening, I'm running this way, away from the incident, and they're running towards it. So let's start with an introduction.
So I'm Officer Anthony Bavosi, resident of Bellingham still, but worked here in Milford a little over 3 years now. So transferred, I was a Bellingham police officer for a little over 5 years and was looking for some opportunity. Saw it over here in Milford and transferred over to Milford back in December of 2020.
Now, Anthony, what makes Milford so unique? I mean,
My family's a Milford family. I was very familiar with the town. Grew up, hanging out with a lot of the guys and gals over there, even entertained transferring to Milford High School at one point for, a sporting opportunity. Stayed, I was born and raised in Mendon, so I stayed, over and went and attended and graduated from Nipmuc. But Milford was one of those towns that I was very familiar with. I was very comfortable with. My family, again, was a Milford family. I had family on the police force. I was very interested in, joining the force at the time. They were civil service. I remember actually going with Chief Ticino. Robbie and I actually went and took the civil service exam together. This is probably back somewhere in the 2001, 2002 ballpark. It was a test. You had to score, you had to interview, you had to go through the process. It didn't work out at that point for me. So I went into the private sector for a while, worked there, and while I was, at Verizon working with the phone company, I ended up purchasing a home in Bellingham. In Bellingham, again, a civil service community, things weren't really working out at Verizon for me. There was some shifts. They had changed some of our jobs, and I still had that itch, to become a police officer. I had gone to college, got my degree, criminal justice psychology, got out. Had worked in the schools for a little while when I graduated, and I had the pleasure to work with Carl Ambrosino over in Upton at Valley Tech. And I really appreciated both him as a police officer and, the idea of the school resource officer in the schools with the kids. So I tested in Bellingham. I ended up scoring well. They brought us in for an interview, and I ended up getting hired. I was a resident of the town, so that certainly helped me. So I got in Bellingham, worked with a great group of guys, including administration. Smaller town, smaller dynamic, not as many opportunities. And after a few years, they asked me when I got in, what do you want to do? I said, I want to be a cop. I want to be a patrolman, right? And they said, no, but long-term goals, what do you want? I said, I want to be a school resource officer, right? That's my, kind of my goal was detective, school resource officer type thing, a specialty, right? So did Bellingham for a few years. The opportunities really weren't there. And looking kind of straight ahead, I said, this is going to take a while, right, to get where I want to go. And I'm getting older. I got into the career, obviously, a little bit later. I was in my mid-30s. And I said, well, I looked down the street in Milford, kind of that agency that I originally tried for years and years ago, and I saw the opportunities. And some of the guys who I remained very friendly with throughout the years, Deputy Chief Souza, Chief Ticino, we'd stay on the phone, right? We'd talk, we'd communicate, we'd bump into each other out on details or jobs or whatnot. And my aunt is actually the secretary for the chief. So Jean was the chief secretary, and I knew there was going to be some openings because there was a lot of retirements coming up. And I ended up interviewing over there and got an opportunity. And same thing, what do you want to do long term? I said, I want to be in the schools with the kids. And took me a little over a year, maybe a year and a half, give or take, here in Milford, and I got exactly that. I got to get into the school with the kids. So I did a short stint, K through 8, with the 4 buildings, and then Officer Gresham, Joe Gresham, ended up retiring, and the administration gave me an opportunity to go to the high school. So I've been the high school SRO. This is my second, full year up there, and I love it. It's exactly what I wanted and where I belong, and kind of rejuvenated that idea for me of being a police officer, right? Like patrol just didn't happen to be really what I enjoyed, what I wanted to spend my time doing every day. I like working with the kids. I like working with the teachers. Some call me crazy, but it's just what I enjoy doing.
Fundamental question.
Absolutely.
Why be a cop? I mean, I look at the media today, and certainly they don't portray the positive aspects of what police do. But in general, you're running towards danger, not away from danger. Why would you sign up for that?
I think for many, it comes down to many different things, right? For me, I always wanted to be involved, in my community. I wanted to help, right? To some, it sounds like maybe a lame or corny answer, but I liked also having my finger on the pulse. I would hear the radio, like if you had the scanners back in the day or the radios or whatnot, you'd hear it. You'd see them go by you with the blue lights on. And, as a younger person, right, especially, this idea of being able to help, this idea of being able to run into the building and help people and save people and, help the person change the tire, there's so many different aspects of the job that you can get involved in. Help the kids, help adults, investigate, like get the bad guy, right? Like, so for some of us, if you're built that way, you kind of find some sort of weird excitement in running into that, right? Where others, as you said, that's not for me, I'm just going to call the police. So I knew I kind of had that personality that I always like to be in the thick of it and get involved in that type of thing. And, I felt very comfortable and secure, especially with size and stature. I said, you know what, I'd like to get involved in this. You'll never be a millionaire, but you can make a decent career out of it. To your point, it does come, with some drawbacks, right? There's always the negativity behind some things that maybe people see on TV. If they ever saw the stats, I think they'd be absolutely shocked, because when they present stats to us on, how many use of force incidents or incidents in general result in use of force and all that, you present the stats to people and they just can't believe it, right? But unfortunately, as we know, certain things sell, right? And that's one of the things that sells is the drama and some of that. So, we have a very supportive community, one of the things that you and I talked about. And, every once in a blue moon, something will come up and you just have to deal with it. But the positivity absolutely outweighs the negativity for most of us anyways. So.
Well, I mean, we'll talk about the community support, but when you read in the paper, I have no doubt there's bad cops. They're normal human beings. If you're focusing on the 1% to sell advertisement, so you find there's one not optimum cop out there, but you don't look at the 99, because you just said something. You think of Blue Bloods, Law and Order, 24/7. They solve crimes within 24 hours, within 1 hour of TV.
Sure.
But the reality, you just brought something home where you said helping out somebody with a bad tire. Nobody's going to report that Anthony pulled over and helped my grandmother because she was driving and had a problem with her tire.
Sure.
It's boring.
Yeah.
But it's Milford.
Yep. Yeah.
I think the most fundamental incident that I remember was I remember town meeting getting shut down like it never was. In the middle of town meeting, you got 200 people all talking in motion, and a resident got up and made a motion to defund the police. I've never heard crickets so quickly. Even the moderator wouldn't second the motion.
Sure.
But
Sure.
out of 200 and some people, nobody would second that motion.
Thank God.
Well,
Yeah.
but I mean, if you want drama,
Sure.
you raise your hand to second it.
Right.
But you sat there and thought about it and said, no.
The vast majority of people understand that we're necessary, right? it's like we talked about, it's a very unique business, 24/7, 365. We have gentlemen and ladies that work days, evenings, overnights, holidays. Okay, we're always open, it's never closed. So something happens at the house, 99.9% of the time we're the first one there, right? We beat the fire department. Why? Because we get the faster cars. So we get there, we address issues. I can say firsthand that multiple times, whether you think that someone's breaking into your home or, there's a suspicious person, package, you're calling the police, right? You want us out there. We have specialties attached to the career that know how to investigate things, look at things. It's a comfort. It's a peace of mind that, there's highly trained people and professionals out there that they're going to get here, right? And they're going to take care of it. It's unfortunate that you run into situations where maybe someone's a little bit bitter or resentful or jaded toward the police. Maybe it was a personal experience. Maybe it was something that they saw on TV, the way they were brought up. There's so many different factors that can run into why a person feels the way they do toward the police. I find it also part of our job when we're able to, with the community policing aspect of it, is to get out there and try to get to those people before that, nasty stigma gets in the head, right? Get them young, like with the SROs. Let us get in the schools, right? Get in the schools, get to the kids, do the good, positive stuff with them so they understand, right?
Now, you mentioned it's a civil service town.
It used to be.
What does that mean?
So civil service, many towns, quite a few towns back in the day, you would go and you would test. And if you were a resident, you could get points. Military, you could get points. So it was really a way to try to, bring people in to the career, right? Fire departments still do it. A lot of police departments still do it. And it really helped with, again, folks in the military could get points, time and experience from certain things.
And the higher the points, the more likely you got hired.
Sure. Yeah, you'd get called by a police department. You'd go in, you'd interview. If you were a resident, like I said, you could get preference because you're in that community. And the idea is that person lives in this community. They're a stakeholder in this community. We want them, as an officer.
And they'll tend to stay longer.
Sure. Yeah, the kids might grow up and go to school in the community.
You mentioned your mother, your aunt.
Yeah.
Those are all links to the community
Sure.
that are going to keep you longer.
Absolutely. And to your point, you want to protect people in general, but especially when you have family, right? That's another reason a lot of people get into the profession is they want to feel like the protector, right? So for family reasons, for friends, like I have a lot of friends in this town that their kids go to school at the high school, other schools they're going to be coming up through. I know that it comforts them that there's a lot of us in the school keeping an eye on them. And the same would be true for me, right? If my children ended up going through the Milford schools, it would be nice to have, a really nice presence there to keep an eye on them.
Well, there was a comforting feeling the other day when I had to go in during the mentor program, that as I walked up the stairs, there were two Milford cops parked right in front, making the statement that we're here.
That's it.
Before you can mess with our kids. And I'm paraphrasing, but I looked at those two cruisers with you and the other officer in it, and I said,
Yeah, Sergeant
Mastriani,
Yeah.
and it's like, before you get to the kids, you got to go through us.
People joke because I park, my cruiser on the sidewalk, and I hate to go down this road, but I will because it's necessary. We've also seen an unfortunate, uptick, if you will, in the swatting calls and some of the other school-related violence. So, strategically, I like to place my patrol vehicle on the sidewalk as close to my office. My office up at the high school, as soon as you come up the stairs off of the West Fountain Street, we have the security, the check-in. I need access to that vehicle, right? So, and more important, or as important, is having the vehicle seen, having it
The
in
statement
plain
it
view,
makes is
right?
powerful.
100%. I want people driving by, seeing that vehicle, fully marked cruiser sitting out right in front of the building, and knowing that, there's someone in the building that's keeping an eye on these kids.
Now you test, you interview, but that's just the beginning, isn't it?
Oh, yeah. So you test. Civil service for me in Bellingham, I went and I took the test. You pay, you go, you take the exam. You're good for 2 years on that list. And then when a police department that's civil service is interested in hiring, they can certainly reference that list. So they'll hire you off that list. The benefit to the civil service portion too is they hired you and they paid you. So once you go through all the interviews, once you go through all that and you get to the hiring, they'll actually put you through, the police academy. So that
And that's
police
more than a
academy,
couple days of
oh, that's
training.
over 6 months. That's not fun. Some of the stuff's fun, but I enjoyed like EVOC, which is like your evasive driving. I like doing the firearms and whatnot, but can't say that I particularly enjoyed being pepper sprayed in the face and hit with batons and all that. But it's a necessary part of the job, is that training. It's for you to understand. They do a good job with a lot of people, breaking them down and building them back up and preparing them for those unfortunate incidents you might have out on the street.
Well, I hate to be cold, but the only way you're going to appreciate, at least in my mind, the effect of pepper spray is if you felt the pain, the
Sure. Yeah.
anxiety that, it's coming and then feeling it.
Well, the same taser, same with everything that we train with. It's for you to understand the effect of it, and it's a big safety thing, right? Like if this ever were to use, or someone used this against you, right? Pepper spray is a perfect example. They didn't just pepper spray you and say, how's that feel? You have a drill that you have to go through. You have to fight off 3 bad guys that are trying to take your gun. You have to actually get someone on the ground, handcuff them, use your radio, because they want to tell you, look, you're going to be in a situation where if you use this, it could blow back on you. There's so many different things that could happen, and you need to know how to fight through it. It's also, for me, it's been a very valuable, tool, because if I do get into a situation with someone where that might be an option that I have to use that, I will say to them, quite frankly, you don't want this. I've had it, and it's just not fun, right? You don't want this. So you're a little bit more convincing. You sell it a little bit better to them. So, yeah, that was over 6 months, and it doesn't stop there. It doesn't stop there. The training, once you get in, a lot of departments do a very extensive what's called FTO, field training. And typically it's 12 weeks, sometimes, so a good 3 months officers will ride around with other trained officers. You go to school to learn how to be an actual FTO, they call it, a field training officer. And you do at least 3 months. Sometimes you can do a little bit more. And, so you get all that training and experience in the academy for the 6+ months. And then you also get an additional 3+ months riding around with a seasoned officer, kind of showing you the road, and just someone there so when you start to experience these calls, they can help.
So the Milford Police Department is investing a year's salary plus all the accessories
Sure.
before somebody is ready to be somebody that can walk the beat?
Yeah, if you do it the old-fashioned way, right, of hiring the person, testing, hiring, bringing them in, absolutely. If you're fortunate enough to also incorporate some lateral transfers, that's a big part of the business too, and is trying to sell that to a guy that might not be happy, such as me, such as my friend Steve Foss that came over with me from Bellingham at the same time, and there was actually 4 other officers that transferred from respective agencies at the same time that Officer Foss and I did, Detective Foss now. They see maybe an opportunity in their hometown, or they see an opportunity to do, I think 5 out of the 6 of us that came over are all in specialties, right? So we had this idea that maybe if we lateral over, we can carry that experience over, get into something that we're more interested in. Detective Foss is part of Family Services Unit. I have Officer Pokanicki that does like our licensing and whatnot. Officer Canaro is an SRO with me. Detective Crossan got into detectives. So laterals are huge, and it's a big cost savings to the town. And when you try to lateral over, yeah, sure, there's still a little expense involved in that, right? Like the administration will,
But it's not $100,000
oh, no.
to take a raw recruit.
Nope, not even close, right? You might spend a little bit of money outfitting them with some tools, right? But in maybe putting them on the street, most of our laterals, if they do 2 or 3 weeks of an FTO, that's something. I think we did 2 weeks because you've been doing the job. You're more doing that FTO when you come to a new place just to learn their way in some of the streets.
Learn their way and learn the community. And
Sure, yeah. And, laterals, they're not always the answer. Of course, it's cheaper. You can also kind of ask around a little bit and find out how that person was as a police officer, right? And do a good job. We do a very good, extensive background on all the officers with these background checks. Like, we have the detectives going, knocking on doors, like really, pulling everything, talking to their current administration, talking to neighbors and family. And I think we do an excellent job, figuring out who is going to fit and who's not. And even with Chief Tessino, when he was deputy chief, I would go to him and say, like, I like this person, I like their personality, I think they're going to fit in really well with the men and women here. And they were very good about working with me on some of these recruits. Other officers would come to me and say, hey, do you know so-and-so? I do. He or she's looking for an opportunity over here. I would go get Chief Tessino's ear, I'd get Robbie's ear, and just say to him, like, hey, I think this person's going to be a good fit for us. I think we should bring him over. Also, when I came over here, I became the union president, right? So I've always had that union background thing in me. When I worked for Verizon for 11 years, I was big into the union. When I was in Bellingham, I was their president for a while. So when I came over here to Milford, there was a need for that. I did it. I stepped in and, volunteered to do it, was elected to it. I'm in my second year here in Milford doing it. And I enjoy it. It's busy. It's takes a lot of work, takes a lot of effort, but it's something that I enjoy doing. I had a lot of training in that too. When I was with the IBEW over at Verizon, I had some guys, Keith Herrick, who's a Milford guy, that was fantastic about sending me to the trainings, answering my questions, and really prepared me so that when I became a police officer years ago, getting involved in Mass Cop, which is our, kind of our union, if you will. We're the Milford Police Association, but we're under Mass Cop as a local 218 organization. It was nice to have that prior training, because now coming here, there's a learning curve as far as changing professions and careers from, private maybe to public sector, but the vast majority of it's the same. And getting involved in the union was good for me too, because as the president, they were very good and still are excellent about the collaboration between the administration and the union, right? They see it as our department, and that's because it's exactly what it is. So that attitude of, this is my department, we don't have that, it's our department. So they're very good about bringing me and the other executive board members into things and saying, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Are the guys and girls gonna like this? Are they not gonna like it? And I'll have union meetings and I'll talk to the folks and I'll say, here are some ideas. Since Chief Tessino's taken over, we spitball. He's like, hey, I want to try, setting up this awards, committee where an officer saves a life or whatnot. Here's some things that we can do. So I bring it back to the members. I talk to them. We caucus. We try to figure it out. They've always also been very good about negotiating, right? Like when we sit down to try to negotiate contracts, we have a lot of great support, not only from the selectmen, but from also our administration. We're trying to make Milford as appealing as possible, right? We want to set ourselves above other police departments so we can continue to attract that attention, whether it's from a lateral transfer or someone off the street that has an opportunity to go just about anywhere they want right now.
That was going to say,
Right.
It's got to be a consideration. You're in town A, and you're looking to make a move. You don't have to be upset or mad. You just, it's time. I want to make a move.
More money, name
More
it.
money,
Yeah,
whatever.
sure.
And you turn around and say, if I read about Milford, if I talk to other, because the grapevine is going to be there. You're going to know
Sure.
other police officers.
We are very busy. Yeah.
And
Yep.
they tell you that there's support, this is good, there's good management. That's got to have an effect versus hearing, well, the town doesn't support us and we don't get the right tools we need.
There's got to be the offset, right? Because you can't say to someone, hey, we're in February and we're closing in on 5,000 calls for service, right? A lot of people are going to see that and go, wow, okay, well, Milford's extremely busy. A lot of people don't mind busy, right? A lot of people want to have a little downtime, and rightfully so. It's a tough profession, right? So when you look at a town like Milford and how busy it is and how involved it is, right, it can be a difficult town to work in. And folks look and say, but if I go next door, right, and it's not as busy and I can make the same amount of money, maybe I want to do that instead, right? So I take a lot of that into consideration when I work with the administration, as does the administration in the town, and say, we have to be more tempting than the other places, right? Because especially as you get older, in your 30s, you're going to look at a town that you can make good money and maybe be a little bit more relaxed and low-key, not running around. And you're going to look at a town like Milford and you're going to say, what makes it more worth it? You want us to be strong, as an organization. You want to hear good things about the support that we get internally, as you said, from your administration. You want a good working, group of men and women. You want good support from the community. I talk to a lot of the candidates that want to come over. At least the last 3 or 4 hires, I've had multiple conversations with them on the phone, answering questions about our contract, answering questions about the department, bringing them in to meet the administration, and really working on them, right? Giving them the good, giving them the bad, the pros and the cons. And we're fortunate at this point that for a lot of people, the pros do outweigh, the cons, and they are interested in coming over here. So it's taken a lot of hard work by, all those involved. And a lot of places are now starting to catch up to us. So that's going to be another challenge, that we're going to.
So we got to raise our bar a little bit higher.
We do, and the other thing that we also have to, be cognizant of, and there's been a lot of talk around it, and I'm hoping, that it takes off. Milford's numbers, meaning our manning, right? How many people do we have on each shift? We've been, at this 4-1 number for a long time, meaning we have 4 patrolmen and a sergeant, mandatory on every shift, right? So we run 3 shifts, obviously, 8 to 4, 4 to 12, and 12 to 8 for patrol. Some of our specialties are a little bit staggered, but those are the 3, basic patrol shifts. What ends up happening is that 4 to 12 shift, for instance, is extremely busy, especially on a Friday or a Saturday night. 4 to 12 can be off the wall, like call to call to call to call. Now, when your numbers haven't increased, when that 4 patrolmen and 1 sergeant number hasn't increased for years, well, one thing's definitely increasing over the years, and that's the population, okay? So you have more people, we have more businesses, we have more kids in the schools, all of that is going up and increasing, but we're stuck at this number, okay? So there's been a lot of talk between us in we got to get the numbers up, right? We have got to add officers to this department so that we can increase. Let's say we do baby steps and we start that 4 to 12 shift. We want to go 5 and 1. We want 5 officers and 1 sergeant on every shift. That's the minimum that we want to run. As you and I have talked about, and as Chief DeCino and everyone knows, and he's presented, and you can't just hire 1 person. Right, it's not how it works.
And that's hard for people to understand, that a +1, and again, I joke and I say, I think Chief Ticino should issue the memo. All crimes can only happen between 8 and 5,
Sure.
Monday through Friday.
That's it. Then maybe you can hire 1 employee. But what we're missing about policing, or what maybe people aren't as clear on, it's 7 days a week. It's 3 shifts. There's an overlap. You can't have somebody working 7 days a week. So at the minimum, you'd have 1 person work that first 4-day rotation, because we're a department of a 4 and 2 for our normal patrol functions. A lot of departments, I'd say the vast majority, work a 4 and 2 schedule. So you have the first 4 days are covered. Well, what about the next 3? Okay. Well, that's where the second hire would come in, is you'd have the 1 employee that would take you through that first half of the week, that second employee that would take you through the other half of the week. The other thing we don't take into account is, what if a guy's on a vacation day? What if a guy, falls ill and he's out for the day? So that's why we've always had this idea, or really the number has always been 3 to 4 police officers per increase in a manning in that number. So, hypothetically, we want to increase that 4 and 12 shift, or that 4 to 12 shift to a 5 and 1. Low ball, you'd want 3, right? Ideally, you'd get 4. And we'd really try to stretch. If we were able to acquire 4 officers, we'd really have to try to take like 3 and put them on that shift, increase that manning, and then try to steal one of those guys and bleed them somewhere else, whether it's into the family services unit that we have, the schools, detectives. we're at the same numbers in all these things that we've been for years, but we're just getting busier and busier.
Well, the town is growing.
Correct.
And unfortunately, again, if we stay with the 99% good, there's 1% not so good. And as the numbers get up, you get more of those not so good people.
Yeah, and again, as you and I have discussed, we're questioned from time to time, like, you know, do you think there's an uptick in crime? I don't think there's an uptick in crime.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Lately, you hear about a robbery here, you hear about a stabbing there. Is that new? Is that
Certainly not new. I think that another thing that this administration has done is, you know, police departments are normally transparent anyways, but with this, we've really stepped into the day and age of technology, right? So we have one of our dispatchers, Jay Cavino, they've kind of, you know, tasked him with the social media aspect. We have a website now. We go on social media like Facebook and Twitter, and we post for the public to see. Whether it's a road closure for a reason, whether it's a bad accident, we want the public to know what's going on. We don't want people to have to, you know, be the ambulance chasers or listen to the radios, or, you know, we want you to be able to stay off the road or understand there's a parking ban. So we've done so much better getting into the times.
well, the other night, social media posts said stay off of Route 140 between Asylum Street and all.
For the pedestrian struck, sure.
Well, I was on this side of town. I just went around it.
Sure.
I wasn't inconvenienced maybe 10 seconds by going up Congress Street instead.
Right.
But that was,
It's a nice, you know, thing to have, because it helps people with everything from traffic to being informed if you're safe. Like this morning, we even had something happen, and we posted to make sure that folks knew, yep, you're going to see a large police presence in this area, but it's not of a safety concern to you folks. You know, we share what we can. There's certain things that we don't want to get into, right? But we want the public to know you're safe, we're out there. And the benefit to being very transparent on social media is you quell a lot of those worries or, you know, anxieties. But at the same time, when they hear there was a, you know, armed robbery here or a stabbing over here, you know, people worry. It's been going on. It's not new. It's just that we're sharing more with you. So there's not a public safety issue. We're out there.
are you worried that being more transparent will reflect badly on the police force?
I don't, because we try to be as proactive as we can, right? Whether it's out there talking to people, answering questions, they field all sorts of things, you know, over the websites and social media. If we see folks out at a coffee shop, you know, we talk to people. Like for me, I see so many people throughout the day at the schools, and I can speak to them about what's going on. And word travels fast. We kind of know what areas, whether it's senior centers, schools, and whatnot, where we can get to and kind of explain what's going on. Yeah, there's certainly a risk that, you know, by publishing everything, right, by putting everything out there, that you cause concern. But I think that clarifying with folks that, like, this isn't new, we're just letting you know about it.
Well, the other thing is being transparent is only a risk to people who aren't doing optimal policing.
Sure. Sure.
I mean, will you be perfect? No. I mean, I don't envy anybody who's got a split second to make up their mind because somebody's pulling a gun on them.
Absolutely.
I don't know how I would react.
Yep.
You know, I could sit there and say, I will never shoot somebody. Somebody puts a pistol to my daughter's head. Wait a minute. Let me rethink that
Sure.
last statement.
Absolutely.
But I have
Absolutely.
time to rethink.
Yeah.
I don't envy the police officers who have split seconds to make up their mind. And will they always be perfect? Probably not.
Part of being a human,
Yes.
right? You just have
Yeah,
to
we
minimize
keep
the
hiring those
mistakes.
humans to be cops.
Yeah. Yeah. Everyone wants the programmed robot that knows exactly what to do.
RoboCop.
Yeah. Yeah. We're fortunate enough that in most situations, you know, we do react correctly. And then if there is something bad that happens, you cross that bridge when you
But
get
that
there.
goes back to the constant training you all are going through.
Every year. Every year.
You know,
We do active shooter. You know, that's a huge thing. Like our special ops team, a lot of great guys on that team. Do a lot of stuff like school vacations. We'll visit a school every year, whether it's Brookside, Memorial, the high school, and we go in and we do the different drills, right? We've implemented new tools, right? Whether it's the shields that we carry, whether it's better rifles. It's always, always training, right? Updating yourselves on laws, defensive tactics. We're big into doing the defensive tactics types like hands-on stuff at the station. They're always looking for the new taser, better firearms. They're always trying to get us, something that makes you feel more comfortable to do the job and the training that goes along with it.
Put you on the spot. How do the day-to-day officers, the cops walking the street, feel about the towns and the way we support our officers?
For the most part, people are pleased. I think that, again, you're going to have negativity. You can't get away from it. I don't care where you live. I think that we're fortunate to live in a part of the state, and I think we're also fortunate to live in a part of the country where there's a lot of support for the police, right? And that's not to take anything away from, other areas in and outside the state, but we have a lot of support. There are a lot of people out there that see us, hear us, they know what we're doing. Whether it's local businesses delivering food, whether it's residents coming in and giving thank you cards. We hear it. We absolutely hear it. But part of that is also getting out there in the community, seeing those people, like Chief DeCino and the guys have also, Deputy Souza, Deputy Sank. Let's do coffee days, right? Let's set up a coffee day up at Honeydew. Folks can come down. They can meet with us. They can talk. It's getting out there. It's trying to do more of that proactive and community policing, engaging, getting to people, making them understand what this is. And they feel better about it, right? And the support comes more. Or there's a critical incident that might occur. They see us out there handling business, and extremely supportive, extremely supportive.
That's good to hear, because there's certain things that people don't understand. I remember when Chief DeCino came to us and was talking about the lockers. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for lockers.
Oh yeah, that was a big one. Yeah.
And I'm thinking MHS, I had a locker.
Sure.
How can this thing cost that much money?
Oh yeah.
And then he explained the need for locking up your weapons,
Sure.
your tasers,
Yep.
your ammunition, charging radios.
Can't do any of that. Yeah.
My little Milford High School locker didn't afford any.
Wouldn't suffice. Yeah. I mean, think about it. For a lot of us, we have uniforms. Okay. We have shoes, belts, boots. We have our entire rig, our whole duty belt on us, which consists of handcuffs, a firearm, taser, etc. A lot of what we now use requires electricity, right? We have to charge our taser battery. Our radio requires a recharge. So it's nice having a locker that's set up to facilitate your clothes, your firearm. Most of us carry pretty big duty bags because when you go out to the cruiser and get ready for shift, you have all sorts of things in there. You have, whether it's citation books, law books that you can cross-reference. You have first aid gear, right? There's so much that you can pack into that bag, and we need to be able to store it somewhere. So the lockers were huge. Chief DeCino and I talked about that. And one thing that Bellingham had when I was there is they had done a newer station, and their lockers were full electric, something to lock up the firearm. And so we talked about it, and he's been good about, like, listen, we need it. So I'm just going to go ask for it. It's going to make life so much easier. You can't walk into the locker room and have, like, 2 little chargers plugged into an electrical outlet. And so a lot of guys have to bring this stuff home, which can be tedious, especially if you have kids, right?
I was going to say the effect on the family. When you said somebody becomes an officer, I would take issue with saying a person becomes an officer. To me, the family
They absolutely
becomes an officer.
They absolutely do. Yeah. You try to keep most of it out of the house, right? And, I have a young son. He's 6. Luke is 6, and he's loves police, which is fantastic, right? Don't want him to be a cop, but that's a story for another day. It's that danger thing I don't want my son involved in, but loves police, loves to see the uniform and the boots and all that. So, yeah, there's a part of it that's very cool for him to see, and I love him to be able to see Dad's stuff in the house. But I don't want to take home some of the stuff that I do.
But how do you not take home the angst of Dad or Mom is walking out of the house, and it's a small percentage.
Sure.
But there's a percentage that she's not coming back in the same state that she left.
Sure. The other thing that we've been able to collaborate on, and we've gotten very good about current times, right? I think more chiefs and folks in general in the profession are understanding it's no more suck it up, buttercup. That doesn't work, okay? You see a lot of really nasty, traumatic stuff out there. And if you don't address it, that's why certain things like the suicide rate are so high. That's why guys turn to drugs and alcohol, and gals. And that's why it's important that when you do see something, you're able to, address it, handle it. So one of the things that, Chief DeCino and I have also talked a lot about and worked on, we recently did a training at the station called CTI, right? CIT, and crisis intervention training. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to get a lot of officers put through that to make sure that they understand. And there's other things called CISM, peer support. There's these different organizations that will go out to brother and sister agencies and speak to the officers if they've experienced a traumatic event. Peer support within your own department, right, to try to help get that person. Being the union guy and him being the chief, we recognize that untreated, it's not healthy for home life. It's not healthy for health in general, right? So we're doing much better about putting these trainings and these different organizations together to try to address the issues.
I could never be an officer because I don't know that I could control myself if I walked into a situation where some animal is hurting a child.
Yeah, that's where I come in. Yeah.
But I mean,
Yep.
I know I got trained, but to see somebody molesting or hurting a child.
Sure. You got to talk about it. For some,
Yeah.
Everyone's different, right? You might have a guy that internalizes it and just goes to the gym, and maybe that works for him. Then you have another guy or girl that sees it, a man or woman that sees it that might, go talk to someone, then go to the gym, right? For everyone, you have to figure out what works for you. Talking to friends, talking to family, talking to counseling. We're getting better about putting these things in place so that people are in, the career healthy longer, right? And that's the goal. So it's getting better. Again, not to be redundant, it is getting better. It's something that every person has to figure out what's for them. One of the things that I had to consider coming into being a school resource officer, right? One of the things they wanted to do with us was, hey, at some point, you're going to be in this family services unit. We want to make everyone detectives, and you're going to be investigating sex assaults. And you're going up, you're sitting with a forensic interviewer, you're listening to this juvenile speak about something that potentially happened to them, and you don't just walk away from that, and not unhear some of the stuff.
See, in my mind, you can't have sex with a little kid.
Yeah.
That's a sickness you can't talk about it that it's sex. Okay?
Yeah.
It's a sickness. It's
Yeah.
just the idea.
You have to rely on the court. You have to rely that that person's going to be put where they belong. And for you, you just have to seek whatever resources that you need
Yeah.
to seek to try to keep your mind right, because you can't let it get to you, right? You can't, because there's so many other kids that you need to be there to help. And if you're not in a good spot, you're not going to help those kids.
Now, questions come up about the amount of investment we've made in school resource officers, in the SWAT team,
Sure.
and people ask a question, do they do anything? My answer is a stock answer saying, I hope not.
We love that. Yeah.
I hope they're just doing routine shake and bake type,
Yeah.
but realistically,
Yeah. My principal does the same thing up at, MHS. Josh Otland will say to me, my goal is that you're bored for the day.
yes.
And we joke about it, right? But the problem is when the population grows the way that it does, and you have, just shy of 5,000 kids in the schools, you have another 850 faculty and staff that you're responsible for. Officer Canaro and I, Cody and I are it. We're the two SROs funded by the police station. So with only two to have to do everything that's involved in that job, right? And I also take care of Shining Star, which is the schools,
The little ones.
preschools downstairs, which again, something I love. But two guys to handle traffic complaints related to schools, internal issues in the schools, there'll be teachers that even come to us with stuff that's happening at their homes, right, that we'll try to help them with. The ops guys have been great about helping to supplement a lot of what we either can't get to, we need help with. The ops guys do a ton of the traffic stuff. They're sitting on the West Fountain streets and the Walnut streets and school streets and.
But by definition, Anthony, we got 5 major schools,
Yes,
2 SROs.
yes,
You can't do traffic at all 5.
you can't. You can't. I need my ops guys. My ops guys will go out to Brookside. They'll go out to Memorial. They're going out to Woodland. They're watching traffic flow. They're trying to get citizens through that aren't maybe dropping off kids. And then if, Cody or I, if Officer Canaro or I are like up against it, it's nice to be able to call them and say, hey, I need a hand, right? And anytime there's a disturbance at the school, those guys are on the radio chirping, coming right up there. They'll sit at the tennis courts on West Fountain Street while I'm in there dealing with the day-to-day, and they're watching people up and down that street to make sure that the kids are safe.
Well, I remember when we were requested to fund the SWAT program. And obviously the question comes out, why? The statement that hit me the hardest was, we're part of a regional SWAT group, and they should be proud, from all over the region.
Sure.
They can be at Milford schools within 30 minutes of a call.
Not going to work.
And they exactly, because they said the average school incident is over in 18 minutes. So I remember looking at then the chairman of the FinCom, Chris Moore, and saying, God help us if we don't fund this and something happens.
Sure. Yep.
How do I go to a parent and say, I'm sorry you lost your child, but we saved money this year by not funding the police?
Yeah. Those ops guys also have that specialized training. So if, God forbid, something were to happen in that school, right, they know how to clear buildings. They know how to deal with barricaded subjects. They know how to do a lot of that. The guys, a few of them were just up in New Hampshire last week doing a 2-day thing, with the rifles and whatnot. So it's nice to have those guys. They specialize, in that type of stuff, right, so that if something does happen, my buddies are right down the street coming in, and they're going to help me clear stairwells, clear rooms. They have the specialized training and tools.
But your other SRO and the SWAT guys know the schools.
Oh, very well.
How many times have we heard that the response was delayed because the officers didn't know that a bad guy could hide behind the back stairwell?
It doesn't happen with us too often. We're pretty fortunate that the camera systems in the schools are pretty good, right? I think we're working to improve some of that. We just got a live feed back at the station, which is very helpful. So in the dispatch area, we're going to have a camera feed to the schools so that if I'm in the school, if the guys are in the school, we don't see something in or outside, that can be communicated to us. So we're making a lot of these advances and upgrades, to the way that either technology or the way that we're doing, the policing at these buildings. They have us go through those schools.
But see, that to me, the technology's great. But in my mind, there's nothing more valuable than the fact that the two of you live in Milford High. You wander the halls, the schools. You've got a number of police officers who spend extra time walking the schools.
Sure.
And to me, that's training.
Yeah, and so Officer Canaro is really more based out of Stacy because that's extremely busy, similar to the high school. I'm at the high school. And, Officer Canaro also has that responsibility of the Brookside, Woodland, and Memorial. I also try to assist with them there. But it's nice to have, those ops guys so that if there is an issue at Stacy and maybe Cody happens to be at one of the other buildings, or if we want, Mike or John or Scott or Jimmy to go into one of those places, from the ops teams, they can. So, part of our responsibility is you tell me who the principal is, you tell me who the assistant principal is, you tell me, what grades are in this building, you tell me, where the exits are. We just went through recently and started, looking at doors to make sure that all the key access was working correctly. So a big part of, our job as a team is get in there, learn it, so that if there is something that happens, you guys know where you're going. You know what you're doing. And
Well,
some of them even had the fortune of going through Milford school system, so they know a lot of the buildings, right?
but realistically, if you were all the way down in Memorial and you got a call from Milford High,
Sure.
how long would it take an officer? A minute? 2 minutes?
If that, if one of the guys isn't sitting on West Fountain Street already,
Right.
if one of the guys isn't
But if they
sitting
were
at
all the way in
Brookside,
Memorial,
Yep.
the other end of Milford High,
we're right there.
it's
Yep.
a minute or
A
two.
minute or two tops. Blue
And more
lights
importantly,
sirens
they
all the
know
way.
everything about the schools.
Sure. Yep.
One of the things you hear a lot more out west is that the children grew up with negative impressions of police officers. Having SROs so that, I could see if the only time I came in contact with an officer is in a negative situation.
Your mind will go there.
My mind's going to go there saying, oh, there's
Sure.
a cop, something must be bad.
Right.
Just having you in the school system, interacting with the kids, helping them with their backpacks, helping an old lady with a tire,
Sure.
that's got to have a positive impact on how kids grow up.
It sure does, and we need to do it more, right? And that's one of the frustrating parts in a town where the department hasn't grown, but population, schools, and everything else has. We, unfortunately, don't get to be as proactive as we want, right? You'll look at, brothering and sistering towns that have similar numbers that have 3 or 4 SROs. And again, something Chief DeCino and the admin and others recognize is we need more, right? But we can't bleed patrol, right?
Right.
You can't rob from one area it's not going to work. So right now, Officer Canaro and I are very reactive because we have to be. When we do get that opportunity to do the proactive stuff, it's awesome. It's great to go to do, the field day games with Jen Walsh. It's great to do a lot of this stuff and get out there and be exposed. But we want more of that, right? And that's why, Chief and I have talked, and it's like, look, we got to get a third SRO in the schools. We have to, right? That third person is going to be crucial to get into those 3 elementaries. Right now, Officer Canaro and I will actually have to schedule readings, with Brookside or Memorial or Woodland to get in there and see the kids and talk to them and do that. We're fortunate also in this town that we're in plain clothes in the schools, right? Because we want that, non-intimidating look. They want that, softer approach and touch where you go in, the kids see you, they feel more comfortable, and it works. It works, right? So we do as much as we can. Same for patrol and the other things. You do as much proactive work as you can, but you get torn away from it so often because of a call for service or something that's going on. So but to your point, the goal, get in when they're in kindergarten, first, second, third grade. Talk to them, learn their names, make them understand what this is, right? So as they get older, you're not doing double the work at the high school and at the middle school to try to flip that perception.
When we were on the selection committee for the chief, I got home one night and I mentioned to my daughter that you and the past chief were on, and her visceral reaction was, oh yeah, Anthony, he's that police officer that's always around helping us. That stuck in my mind.
Sure.
Because I sat there and said, if you're doing nothing else, that's her first instinctive reaction. There's a cop from Milford in here, not carrying a gun and intimidating, but just hanging around and helping out.
She gets a little more of my attention than many others. She works in a area of the building where I get to go in and see some students that I really enjoy going in and seeing. There's some of our special needs students, right? Whether it's Downs or autism or whatnot, and the kids just love to see the police, and you just feel different when you're in that room. You have a new appreciation for life and in kids and people in general, and just to see your daughter
But to
and all
me,
that, it's awesome.
Building that stereotype, cop good, cop helpful.
Important.
When a situation comes up that's not optimal, I would imagine they're much more apt to help out.
Yeah.
Because they're not scared. We see on TV the inner city, and again, I always love these police shows. All crimes are addressed and concluded within 50 minutes.
Ideally. Yeah.
I mean, if that was reality, then Robbie could issue his 8 to 5
Yeah.
Monday through Friday memo.
Sure. Absolutely.
But you're building a trust that's got to pay off for the town.
Oh, and we want to do it with our patrolmen too, right? The men and women that work, at our place, we want them out at the coffee shops, talking to the people. We want them, to be able to get out there, young and old, and explain, what we're all about, what we're doing. It's a more personalized approach, right? Like, this is who I am. I'm part of your community. We do a good job, but I think, we're going to keep pushing to try to add those numbers to our department. We're going to keep pushing to try to get a little bit more breathing room when it comes to these calls for service, and we'll get there. I'm confident we'll get there. Unfortunately, there's a cost to everything, and
And
we'll see how it
realistically,
goes.
it was like the radios. It was a lot of equipment where it hit us when Robbie said the officer down at Oliva's pulls on his radio and he hears Franklin Fire. I was like, whoa, we got to deal with this because that's putting somebody's life in, not just the officer's life,
Yeah, the citizen,
but
sure.
the citizen that he's trying to protect.
Absolutely.
So I have no doubt that the town will respond. We may not be able to do 4 cops in 1 year,
Sure.
and I know ideally we'd like to,
Yeah. Yep.
but we may have to phase it in.
Yeah, we got to chip away at it. It's definitely something that is a huge focus for us right now because we know it's going to be very difficult. There's a burnout, right? Like naturally with any job, but especially with this one, right? The types of calls, go, the hours. We have to be able to, get more, people in the schools and in the family services unit and in patrol and helping the detectives. We need it, right?
How many police people, I mean detectives, support, how many, because it's not just officers.
No, so from the top down, I would say from, the chief down, we're around 51. So we have 3 administrators, and then we have around 48 patrolmen and women at this point.
And how does that compare to other towns? And we can't use the 28,000 people official listing.
Sure.
We're up over 30, 32.
Yeah, yep. Oh, easy. Yeah, that's documented. And then never mind, what we have for the undocumented population. We're easily soaring 40,000 plus as far as, there was a stat that I researched when I became big into the union to try to kind of plead with the town to help, right? At one point it was you want 2.2 police officers for every 1,000 citizens. So even if you go by our documented number,
We'd still be 10 more.
easy, 10 plus, right? So, and is that a reality in a lot of places? It isn't, right? It's a guideline to try to go by. If you're fortunate enough to get there, great. If not, it is what it is. So I think that, to your point, I know of towns, I used to work in one, right, that, guess what? We were running similar numbers on the road with a population of 17,000. So that's where the concern is. That's why we're trying to look for
Well,
this.
thank you for coming on and clarifying.
Absolutely.
Like I said, I believe transparency is good for Milford Police because I believe you guys are doing. Are you perfect? No. Will you make a mistake? Yes. Unfortunately, you hire humans.
Yep.
But overall, when an entire town meeting stops, when somebody says defund, when we have 2 demonstrations and one of them was in the rain, to say basically just thank you. Thank you for putting your life on the line so I don't have to. Thank
We
you for
appreciate
doing
it.
everything you do.
Yeah, we appreciate it, believe me.
Especially, thank you for watching out for our kids.
And we need it. We need that positive, feedback from the community, right? It helps you keep going.
So
every
come
day,
spring,
believe
I'll
me.
put my sign back out
Hopefully you won't get in any
That's-
trouble. That's it.
that says I support Milford Police.
Absolutely. We'd appreciate it. We got to get those signs going again.
Thank you so much. And as always, to our 6 loyal viewers, I hope you learned something and you feel proud about our men and women in blue because they are the first responders and they make us feel proud about the services that are offered and what they do. But more than anything, they put their lives at risk so I don't have to. And that's not a small task. So may God bless. May tomorrow be a better night than tonight. Good night, all.